Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today our guest is Karin Clarke. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. I have a question for you, and I'm going to try to paraphrase it because I don't remember exactly, but your website has a line that says, when loss cracks your world open, ... this way. But I wanted to understand your own story of what led you to this path of healing. What was that, I guess, loss or trauma, or what was happening in your world that actually opened you up so you started to work on your own healing?
Which year?
Let's go for the first one that you realized,
Right.
and then we'll build on that.
Yeah. So loss cracks you open, and there's so many losses we experience every, in our life. And I believe, because of what I've experienced in my life, that in this culture, in this society, in our world, and it's more in the United States, I think, we don't get to talk about that. We don't get to talk about like how we're feeling about, oh, I lost my job, or this relationship ended, or a loved one died, or my pet died. Like, we don't get to talk about that. We get to like have that experience and, oh, by the way, move on, because we have shit to do. Right? And also because people expect us to go do something else as well, and they don't want to hold our experiences. So loss, I think, gets buried. And with that, it becomes, a friction within us. And so for me, when I was a single mom and raising a boy in the Los Angeles area, in the San Fernando Valley, it was challenging. It was challenging for a lot of reasons. But we were good. We were a family. But my son started to have some really big struggles. He was brilliant in school, in terms of, his academics, but socially not. So that all brings a whole bunch of shitstorm. So the loss for me started when I didn't feel like I could help. And as a mom, not being able to help because there's so many things going off. And I can't say that they were wrong, it was just off. And feeling that sense of helplessness, hopelessness, and like, what am I not doing? So that loss came from within, from my own self-worth, my own self-ability, and then the struggle, and then the trying to find, and then looking for more answers, and finding more loss. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because it reminds me of the Rumi quote, and I may like fuck it up, who knows? But it's like the wound is where the light enters you. Sort of, I think that's the quote, if I'm not mistaken. So I also find it interesting that when you have certain trauma, pain in your life, and you suppress it down, energetically, it keeps repeating and showing up in different ways. So I don't, I wanted to talk about your whole story, but I didn't want to start with like, let's go to the big nuclear explosion. Let's sort of build up to that kind of thing. But there's a pattern, right? There's a business, there's marriage, your son, whatever you feel comfortable talking about. There's been this domino effect, right? That kept going from one to the other to the other. And it's really powerful that you're saying it's within us, right? We are the ones who are aware of that, or maybe not aware, and we're suppressing that, and it kind of repeats that cycle because we're trying to do something for other people without doing something for ourselves first. So when you're when you're starting to recognize that, how does that start manifesting in your life?
How did it start manifesting?
Yeah.
The struggle, the loss, or the coming out of that?
Well, no, let's start with the struggle, then the loss, and then
Yeah.
we'll go into like what was the
So,
first the
sure.
first kind of thing that happened.
So I think for me, I was pretty aware that like something needed to shift for me. Like I needed to go like, oh, I needed to find more resource. I need to find, I wasn't just gonna like rest on, oh well, oh but too bad, so sad, I can't help you anymore, son. It wasn't nothing like that. It was the seeking of where are other resources to be stonewalled for so many different reasons, like either I made too much money or I didn't make enough money or he was too smart or not smart enough. It was like all these things. And then I had a child who was unbelievably awesome in so many areas and struggled so much to find his own connection with his peers. And so, me not having that experience myself, I don't know how to, like support that or help that. So, watching that struggle as a parent was heartbreaking. And then, in junior high school, he gets in trouble for lighting a match to smoke a cigarette with some of his friends. That was the beginning of one of the biggest roads that ended up, it was the beginning of the road. Because from that, at 12 years old, the judge, because he ended up having to go see a judge, ordered him to go to clean graffiti in Hollywood every Saturday morning with the Hollywood beautification program with grown adult men who were in trouble and on probation and all this other stuff at 12 years old. And I had to drop him off there at 6 o'clock in the morning every Saturday for 8 weeks. Guess what he learned? All kinds of bad shit from all kinds of people who he should never have been hanging around with. And I'm not saying that, that I didn't have any responsibility. I totally did. Like, well, shouldn't have been smoking a cigarette at 13 or 12, no, but we can't stop what our kids are doing at school. But when I protested against that, I was told you will be put in contempt of court by a juvenile justice system here in the San Fernando Valley that proved me to be a criminal justice system, fraudulent, paid for, and I got proof.
Yeah, I mean, just
That
my
was
own, just kind of relate this back from personal experience, I guess. When I was a kid, I was later on diagnosed with the ADD, attention deficit disorder. Now, the disorder is a label, right? So they label you that there's something wrong with you. I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I just wasn't interested in what they were teaching me in these classes because it wasn't stimulating, didn't produce dopamine. And I kind of did the same kind of thing, hung out with older kids, let's smoke a cigarette because you crave the sense of community
right.
from peers. And if you don't know how to get that, you're awkward, whatever. And I'm not saying that I was like that, but you still you crave the sense of community. And unfortunately, especially nowadays, kids get this community through playing video games online with people all over the world. So you falsely think that you have a friend or you have a relationship, but you really don't. And that isolation and the loneliness, especially when it was confounded with other challenges, it becomes amplified a lot more. And my parents didn't really get it either. Like, oh, you're disruptive in school, you're this, you're that. And I went through my own struggles, and they ended up kicking me out and trying to have me arrested. But it's the same kind of thing. It's who you surround yourself with is a culmination of who you are. So as a parent, what can you do about that? I know that you're saying that you could have done something, but what do? You have these influences around. You can't really control who our kids hang out with. But is there any action that somebody that's listening can take when they have a similar path to yours?
You know, the one thing that if I could have done something different, the questions I would have asked my son, instead of do this, do that, instead of telling him something, I would start asking questions. I would start asking questions like, why aren't you able to get this homework done? Or what is this about smoking cigarettes with your friends that makes you feel like you are, part of the group? Ask questions. And because the way I was brought up, and we project our own upbringing onto our kids, whether we like it or not. And if I knew today what I know, if I knew 15 years ago what I know today, I would probably have a different outcome in my life. However, I just think asking questions, being curious, being really curious about who is your kid, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and that's something I definitely did do. I knew what my son's strengths were, and he was always for the underdog, and he would give anybody the shirt off his back, even if he didn't have one. He would go steal one to go give it to someone else. I mean, not really, but that's a metaphor.
Yeah.
But I think really connecting with our kids, and fortunately for me, it wasn't very like phone driven time for me. I wasn't like on my phone and my face in my phone all the time, so I was very present. I mean, we would go bike riding together all the time. He went traveling with me all over the place. So all of that stuff was in place, but there was just still something that he felt was missing. And I couldn't dig into that for I don't know why. And I don't feel guilt over that at this point. But that's my reflection. I wish I would have known. Yeah.
So let's go back to your own story, because one of the things you just mentioned, which I really agree, we mirror, or there's generational trauma, right? So we have trauma, right. We pass that on generation, even without noticing or knowing this epigenetically. So let's start first you grew up in the San Fernando Valley, correct? You were saying in the Los Angeles area. Were your parents together?
They were not. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 5, and I grew up with a single mom, and eventually found out a lesbian mom. So I had 2 moms and didn't even know it. And I'm like, what's going on in my house? So, but ultimately, none of that was like, I was pretty well adjusted. I had great friends, and I still have those friends. I just had my birthday last weekend, and I don't know, 8 of them were at my 60th birthday party. And these are people I've known since junior high school. So I think that kind of, speaks a little bit about the friendships that were formed back then. But it wasn't an abusive situation. Like it was good.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a sister. She's in Colorado.
And you grew up together with your sister and the 2 moms, correct? So
2 moms and an older sister who I didn't know if she was a sister. She wasn't really, but my mom's partner had a daughter as well who was a couple. Yeah.
Got it. So a stepsister. So I'm not a professional psychoanalyst or anything like that. So I'm just going to try amateur hour here, but I'm just trying to. So did you have a relation with your dad?
I did. Yeah, I did.
How? So I'm, and I've heard this kind of thing before happen, because it's interesting when people get married, and, back in the day, there was no, oh, I'm going to be with a woman, I'm going to be with a man. It was really frowned upon, right? There was a stigma associated with that.
Back then, for sure.
So being married and, having a family, your traditional family, and all of a sudden that blows up. and now you're able to maybe find happiness in who you truly are. Different things happen. Number one, there's a dynamic between the people who are married, right? They got divorced now. The dad is, or the husband, ex-husband's asking himself a bunch of questions. How do I not know this? What happened? Was it me that pushed her? People that didn't know. Was it me that pushed her over the side? So you have that, you're carrying that weight. Then, your mom, and then she meets somebody. Now you have to integrate with a different type of family. Even if you're not consciously aware of that, there's got to be some conscious dripping down on you. That's even though you're saying you have a happy childhood, there's turmoil that you may or may not have been aware of, especially when you're younger. How old were you when your parents got divorced?
I was 5, and I found out that the relationship that my mom and her partner had was, a partnership relationship when I was 13. Yeah. But we all lived together in the same house as like roommate situations. So the only thing that really struck me was, what else have I been lied to about?
Right. There's a trust, right? Trust. Yeah,
totally. And I have definitely, I've done all kinds of work on all of these things, and I'm also educated on all of these things, like formally, and like the work that I do personally now with other people. So I get all that with the conscious mind, unconscious mind, reframing, like generational trauma, timeline work, hypnotherapy. That's all I do.
Yeah. But
it's my own work so that I can help others.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You have to go through it yourself, and then you can reflect and help other people. But still, like, you're going through this struggle, which you were not aware of at the time. Divorce, first of all, divorce is already like, I'm divorced. My daughter was 7 or 8 when we got divorced. Even though she may have a wonderful family, like we both give her love and all that stuff, but still, there's got to be something that occurred, because there's some sort of tragedy and loss along the way. All right, so from there, as a kid, what were your interests? Were you into sports, and were you into school? Like, what were you into, young Karin?
I was a ballerina from the time I was 5 until 17. It's like, nobody knows that about me. A few people. I also played soccer. I was into motorcycles. I used to go do all kinds of fun stuff, hiking, camping, all of that. And went to college for a couple of years, dropped out, ended up getting into the automobile industry, and was in that for a very long time. But I had a lot of diverse interests. I had a lot of fun. I like to go do a lot of different things.
Were kids aware that you had 2 moms?
It's really funny. So when I found out, I was mortified, because I was like, oh my God, nobody's going to talk to me. All my friends' parents are going to be like, you can't go to Karin's house. And so when I called my best friend, who I'm still best friends with, I'm like, hey, did you I just found this out. And she's like, duh. And I'm like, what do you mean, duh? She's like, we all know. And I'm like, how do I not know? And so when I started reaching out to a few other friends, same response. Everybody knew. All the parents knew. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody cared. And I did for a couple of months. I was like, you know what, Mom? Fuck you. I'm not talking to you. Yeah. I don't accept this. This is not okay. This is like, I don't understand this. And she's like, that's okay. You're going to need to accept it. Ask me any questions. And I didn't talk to her for a couple of weeks, and then finally we sat down. And my mom and I are absolutely 100% best friends at this point, and have been for decades. So
that's cool. So going forward, I just want to kind of establish this whole thing of loss, trauma, all the things that you talked about, and then how you come out of the other side of that. Because I really want people to learn from your story and then engage with you so you can help them, because there's a lot of people, and I don't want to say this before you share whatever you feel comfortable sharing, but there's been a pattern since COVID started. First, I work with a lot of veterans in my day job, and we lost a lot of veterans during COVID because isolation in their minds, they're missing that camaraderie. It's unfortunate, and medication creates more side effects than anything. They finally discovered plant medicine that we were able to help them with, and we were able to help a lot of people in doing so. And then lately, there's a pattern. Like when my daughter went to school, we've started losing a few people, and I'm just wondering, you know, I've been struggling with this fact myself. I'm trying to figure out why, and it's different reasons why. But I do feel like you're onto something with this whole not fitting in and feeling isolated. Because look, back in the day, we didn't grow up with the internet, we didn't grow up with the phone, and the bullying happens in school, and you get bullied and you punch somebody in the face, or you get punched, and you go home and you hang out with your friends. You don't have to deal with it until the next day. Now they're dealing with it 24 hours a day, all the time, and we as parents may not be aware of what our kids are going through. And I think it's great that you said, ask questions, but sometimes kids are shutting down. Like I even had these conversations with my daughter. She was mad, and it has nothing to do with me. I'm just the closest person to her, so she reflects on me. But there was something else, and it took a long time to start, peeling back layers and layers and layers with patience. Right. And I was losing my patience, to be honest with you. So tell me sort of this trajectory of, your first, so there was a divorce, right, in your life. First, was that the first loss, or am I off?
Yeah, no, I mean, my son's dad and I got divorced when he was 5. Okay. Like I said, so that happened, and so I was raising him on my own in the valley, and a lot of family, a lot of community around. He saw his dad, he all of that was good. We were together for a long time, and it just wasn't working anymore. Right. And so it just was what it was. And then I was, working and had jobs that I would be able to take care of my son after he was done with school. And he wasn't in daycare and all that stuff when he was younger. It was just like, oh, okay. I've got a great opportunity to take care of my kid and be a mom. Cool. And also work and have a home and be responsible. So anyways, but yes, did that create a loss? Absolutely. Did that create a rupture in the family unit? Yes. And in that rupture, there's always, and like you've read my website, there's always a void. Yeah. So then, we have to figure out, where do we go from this void? And this void is where we get to grow. We either grow, or we try to go back to who we were before the rupture happened, which is impossible in every area, because we can't go back to who we no longer are. Whatever the rupture is, whatever the loss is. So I call the rupture a loss, grief, same thing. So growing and finding out, okay, what is my responsibility? Who am I? This all happened. I have to accept that this happened, not that I'm accepting that something bad happened, but this is happening in my life. How do I move from here? How do I learn the lessons I need to learn? What do I need to learn? What do I need to do so that I can be healing, productive, a mom to my kid, still go to work, earn a living, all of that stuff. So for me, that's what I had to do with that one. And, and years go on, and my son's doing, okay, and, school, and now, blah, blah, all that stuff is good. And then high school hits. And so he'd already been in that trouble from junior high school with the smoking thing. And I don't remember what happened next, but same judge, different thing. And it was just one shitstorm after the next with this experience. And because he had already been in trouble when he was 12, he was already tick marked with something. And this had happened repeatedly with many other kids as well that I was witnessing. So he ended up getting his license taken away till he was 18, like all this other. Oh, he smoked weed. That's what it was. He smoked weed and got caught in front of school smoking weed. So he wasn't on school, he was in front of school. That's what happened when he was 15. And so that was a big deal, because that was 2005, long time ago. Before we were allowed to smoke weed. We're not supposed to smoke weed at school, but whatever. Anyway, so just more trouble, more little things. Like if that would have happened when I was a kid, when you were a kid, it'd be like, stop doing that, right?
Not for weed, not because that's my parents kicked me out and tried to have me arrested for consuming cannabis. But but I was in Pennsylvania, I was in Philly. So, but in 1996, California had a law, but still you're a minor, so they're gonna make an example of you.
Yeah. So the just more loss. Like I was having to deal with more things that were just like, I felt like I was never getting ahead. Like things just kept, it was like snowballing. And when I was trying to move through one trauma after the next, after what's going to happen next, like, oh my gosh, stick him in rehab. Okay, he's out of rehab. And then the 2008 collapse of the financial thing happened, and I lose my job. And I'd never lost a job in my life. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. And, the whole refi, like loan modification and all that stuff, that took 2 years to get that stuff done. And in the meantime, we're kind of back on track. Scott and I are back on track, and we're like moving through. And I started dating again and met somebody and ended up getting married again. And everything was awesome until it wasn't, when he decided that he wanted to go back out and go get loaded after being in a program for a while. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I'm kind of fast forwarding. But in the meantime, I was always at a place where I was going to school and learning how to help other people in areas of their life, mostly with health and fitness, like how to be more, like how to fix their gut, how to have better nutrition, how to move their bodies. I've always been into fitness and nutrition myself. So I went to school for all of that and started learning about that, and then was doing that on the side while also working full time and blah, blah, blah. So CBD becomes legal back in 2019, right? So kind of fast forwarding along the way. Meanwhile, my son had gotten himself in some pretty big trouble when he was just 18. Him and some of his friends were at a party, and one of his, not girlfriend, but a female friend, I don't know what happened. I wasn't in town that weekend, but she pushed him through a plate glass table and sliced his face open. It sliced his face open here and on his neck. And they were pretty intoxicated, I guess. And he hit her with something, and I don't even know what that is still to this day. And he was arrested and unfortunately was made to serve time at 18. And that was the beginning of the end for like any ability for him to feel worthy, loved, like he had an ability to have a future, because now he has a felony. And the felony happened as a result of his prior juvenile record. And even though people will say to me all day long, that's impossible, that is totally what happened.
Yeah, you have a stigma on it. Like as soon as you get into the system, everybody communicates. There's there are notes in the file, so to speak.
Right. And I know who my son is. I like take responsibility. I know exactly who he is. I know exactly what was going on. I didn't know what was going on at that party, but I also knew that my son was, my son's not violent. He's not that person. And what happened within that system next was even worse, because He was also dabbling in drugs at that point, unfortunately. And as a result of that, being sent to prison at 18 years old, he was sent to a prison up in Monterey, which houses some of the worst criminals in California at 18 years old. And what happened to him there was criminal by the people who were supposed to be in charge. He had to be put in solitary confinement 3 times in a 7-month period because of being brutalized and in the medical ward. And I had to intervene to the point that I could, because he's over the age of 18. There's not a lot that I can do because I'm not the mom of a minor anymore. I can only just hire the attorney, make the phone calls, try to figure things out. And so I did, because fuck that, right? I'm not gonna just let that happen. Ultimately, he was given more time because the guards like to give drug addicts in jail drugs, and then they get them in trouble, and then they get to keep them longer. So that all happened. And again, people could look at me and go, "Your kid's a fucking loser." He's not. He never was. He's still my kid. And he wasn't that person. He was not well and should have never been in many of the situations that he was put in, that he had no control over anymore. So some of the things that I would say to him were, stop doing this stupid shit, right? Because as a mom, we're like frustrated. Like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, come on. Like, what do you need help with? Like, come on, let me help you. Like, oh my God, everything. I did everything under the sun. Good, bad, enabled him, disabled him, enabled him some more, paid for this, paid for that, like rehab, lawyers, all of it. And all with as much compassion and love as possible, right? Because I'm the mom. And so he finally gets out in like February of 2020, right before his 20th birthday. The birthday is in the beginning of March, so he gets out right before his 20th birthday, and then COVID hits. So that was another adventure. He was like coming out, not really like being in there for 2 years, being pretty worn out, pretty brutalized, pretty, fucked up, really. A whole mentality shift of survival. And he was really good for a number of years until he just could not find a job. He could not find his way. He could not figure anything out because of COVID, because of a felony. He ended up contracting hepatitis in jail, and they did not treat him. He ended up in the emergency room in renal failure. We thought he had COVID. He did not. He was so much shit. All of this was going on in the last 5 years. It's one thing after the next. And I had alluded to, CBD became legal. I had opened up a CBD wellness store at the end of 2019. At the end of 2018 into 2019. It was rocking. Studio City, we had a great time. We were doing wellness classes in the back, selling amazing products and supplements and mushrooms and all kinds, not psychedelic, because we're not supposed to, but the functional ones. And he was working with me, and like everything was like kind of flowing, and then it kind of wasn't. And it just kept being all these like things all over the place. So COVID happens and my store gets shut down. And then I decide, you know what? Cannabis is essential. Supplements are essential. I'm opening. Fuck them. So I did. And nobody came back in because everybody was buying everything on Amazon at that point. And so I ended up moving all my product out and starting my wellness practice in that same storefront. Windows closed, blinds closed, and people were coming in for wellness in spite of the fact that COVID was happening, because people want to be healthy. And in the meantime, my son had met somebody and was flying back and forth to New York and having a great time and was really awesome and really doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden he wasn't, because not being well in all of here, he needed to fix. And so he did. And then he got in trouble again. And he was going to be sent back to prison for another drug charge. And he had said to us, in no uncertain terms, said to me, to his father, to his stepfather, who I was no longer married to, but they were still friends, I will never go back to prison. I will never go back to prison. And I'm making this very short. There was a lot more shitstorm going on in there. But in September of 2022, my son was in jail in Michigan as he was flying back and forth across the country for drug charges. And the DA there and the prosecutor there, and the judge there had told him, come in, you're going to be sentenced to time served, and you're going to go. He went in, turned himself in. They said, too bad, so sad. You have a case in California. We're keeping you here until your case there. You're not getting out of Michigan until after your case in California, which will make you miss your court case, and you will have a warrant. And that's exactly what they did. And so when he found out that he had a warrant in California, which meant that for sure he was going to go to prison, on September 12th, he hung himself in jail with sheets hanging over the window. His cellmates asked to leave, and the guards allowed a curtain to be hung over a window for 30 minutes with no interaction and no opening of the cell door or anything for over 30 minutes. And said that that was the way it went. And my son died that day.
Was that in Michigan?
That was in Michigan. Actually, he didn't die that day. He did die that day. They brought him back. They resuscitated him after 27 minutes and took him to the hospital and made a phone call to me. And I flew to Michigan the next day. And that next 3 days was brutal of trying to figure out what to do next, because he would not live without being intubated. Yeah. I couldn't donate his organs because he probably wouldn't die within 90 minutes, which is the time period that one has to pass in order to donate organs. And because he was in jail, there was 2 sheriffs in his hospital room, and they finally unhandcuffed him from the bed. He couldn't move. He was intubated. He wasn't ever coming out of that. And watching that go down shifted every single thing inside of me. And the thing that I'm most grateful for in those final moments was the 5 years prior to that, the work that I had done for myself, the education that I had received to start coaching people on a completely different level besides just, health and wellness, but like really going into their mindset, really helping people shift that, really helping people move through limiting beliefs, really move through their own big shit. And I don't know if that was divine guidance for me that I knew I was going to need in my next incarnation of my own personal life. But the work that I had done for me and the work that I was helping other people achieve, I was able to incorporate that into my own life with my own child. And I was able to ask him those hard questions that I couldn't ask him when he was younger. And I was able to show up for him in a way that allowed him to feel seen and heard and loved and enough, and that I was proud of him, even with everything that had gone down. He knew who I was to him and who he was to me. And one of the things that he said to me, probably about 3 months before he died, I picked him up at the airport and he gets in the car and he said, "You know what, Mom? You're kind of like magic now. I could talk to you about anything." And he did. And it was stuff I did not want to hear. And it was things I did not want to talk about. But I listened. And I let him be heard. And I let him share his deepest, scariest, most unhinged fear of who he thought he was and all of it. And love him so that he knew who he was, at least to me. And the girlfriend that he had allowed him that same thing. And so for us as parents to get our own shit together and to do the work that we need to do, to stop projecting our stuff, whether we think it's good or bad, onto our kids, I think is one of the most important things as parents that we can do. Because I still work with kids who are struggling, but it's the parents who we need to talk to first.
I mean, thank you so much for sharing that powerful story. And it's interesting. I'm going to reflect a couple things. So first of all, as I was saying, I was having some difficulties with my daughter. My dad told me, he goes, "Stop giving her advice. She's not asking you for advice.
Right.
Stop giving her advice." So what you just said about needing to be heard, I think is really an important message for everybody. Feel heard, safe, with love, that it's a container you're allowing. Sometimes kids don't need your lesson or your advice, or, they just want a safe space to be heard and be loved. And that was a lesson for me. So, I mean, I really, really appreciate that. I wanted to ask you about your framework, and maybe I have it wrong, so you correct me if I do, but talk the RVE framework, rupture, void, expansion, right? So if you're, why is void like sort of the most understood part of healing? What's in, and by the way, I wanted to go back before you answered. I'll give you some time to kind of think through this. Just in my own story, what you just said about, healing our own shit. I had this relationship with my parents who kicked me out and it's abusive and all that stuff. But until I got plenty of therapy, but until I was able to bring my parents in as an adult in my 30s at that time,
right,
and have this conversation with my parents there, I was able to release all that anger and all that shit that I was carrying, which allowed me to be emptier so I could actually fill myself with more positive things. So now I can have a positive relationship with, my other family members, my daughter, etc. So I think it's super important for us to recognize and realize that a lot of times we have to hold ourselves accountable for the shit that's going on in our life. And if it's maybe the common denominator is us. So let's start working using this framework to heal ourselves so we can have better relationships with everybody around us.
Right. And you're really lucky, Len, that your parents were willing to have those conversations. There's a lot of parents that they're not willing to have those conversations. They're in so much fear or have to protect themselves so much for being responsible for creating that scenario for us as kids. Like, they don't want to admit that they could have possibly done that. Yeah. It's too much for them to handle because they would have to admit that they made a mistake. And I'm fortunate as well. I was able to have those conversations with my father to a degree. He was far less open than that, but to a degree, and it was enough for me to heal with that. And with my mom, it's a completely different story. My mom just like, okay, now what are you doing? Now what do I have to learn? But yes, so I'm glad to hear that for you.
Thank you. So I was going to go back. I probably interrupted your flow about void being the
Yeah.
most misunderstood part of healing.
So the void is where, the rupture happens and we're left with, fuck, now what?
Right.
Where do I go? Who am I? What do I do? How do I start? What? I don't know. That's the void. And so many people will drink it away, shop it away, sex it away, pass over it, bypass it, pretend it's not happening, move on to the next thing. I mean, I've done that, done it all, right? It doesn't work. It does not heal the process. The void is, the very first step of the void is understanding and taking responsibility for exactly where you are right now. And how did you get here? Because we are responsible for every single thing we do or do not do in our lives. Every choice we make, every choice we don't make, we are responsible. Now, am I saying that somebody as a child is responsible for being abused? No, but we are responsible for how we heal from that. We are responsible for how we respond to life from that, with compassion and love for ourselves, and me as a practitioner having compassion and love and support and guidance for my client.
So using yourself as an example of loss, void, etc. I mean, I can't think of a more devastating loss than the loss of a child. I mean, it's just hard for people to actually connect to. But I mean, it's like we talked about a nuclear explosion that happens in your life.
Right.
When people are going through this loss, void, and whatever that loss or void means to them, what is a small but maybe power, what action can they take? What would be the thing that they should work on themselves after loss? What action can they take?
Connecting back into themselves. And that sounds really like woo-woo and esoteric, but it's actually not. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a lot. Like sitting down, grounding, what am I feeling? Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I in fear? Because a lot of times so many of our emotions just get balled up into this one big mess. And it's so overwhelming that we either just disassociate from ourselves and distract. But if we could actually get quiet, even for just a couple of moments a day, because that's what I did. I mean, I couldn't just like go inward and stay there. I would have jumped. I would have said, where's the tallest building? I'm out. I can't deal with this pain. But for moments, go in and what am I feeling? Where am I feeling it? What is the emotion that's coming up? What is the meaning that I'm giving to this emotion? And how is this affecting me in my day right now? So an example would be just the overwhelming knowing that I'm never going to speak to my son again. It would just like burst me into tears. I could cry about it right now. I might. But just the thought of that, it would like tighten my throat. I would feel like I was being strangled. And if I could just breathe in and allow that to flow and allow myself to feel the depth of that, because if I don't feel it, this sounds really corny, but if I don't feel it, it's not going to heal. It's going to stay present in my body. It's going to move around. It's going to come outward in anger at somebody, pissed off at somebody on the road, whatever. But if I can feel that, I can move that energy. It's like, okay, what do I want to say to him? Go talk to a cloud. I mean, my grief therapist said, go talk to the sky, go talk to the clouds, go talk to the tree, go talk to something that you can connect with, that has energy in it, that you can go speak to your son.
Is
but
there
use my
is there a difference between true healing, like how you work with your clients, to just giving them tools to cope? And is coping with those feelings sufficient for the time being, or do you really need to, go deep and really begin healing? And is there a difference? Would you know the difference between the two? Maybe some people say, I worked on a process. I have a coping mechanism. But as you said, if that's the case, maybe it's going to come out of, it's like you have too many fingers in the dike, and it's going to come out some other place.
It's going to explode. I think coping tools, coping mechanisms are great for when the overwhelm happens, because grief lands and you never know when it's coming, and it can be a tidal wave. Having coping mechanisms for if you're supposed to be at work that day, and how to show up and actually walk yourself through that door, that's awesome. But coming back home and actually sitting down and sitting with that's where the healing is. I think that's where the two differences are, is we can cope and we can have coping techniques, but really allowing ourselves to feel is the only way that we can heal. Now, I think it's also a lifelong process depending upon what that loss is. If it's a job and it's something that really defines you, and you've lost a lot of money, there's a lot of other techniques to use. And once you get another job, that hurt, that pain, that angst, that thing might not feel so overwhelming anymore. If it's the loss of a relationship, you've been in a relationship for 30 years and you didn't want that divorce, and you no longer have your partner, what's the difference between that loss and the loss of someone that's no longer on this planet? Right? I mean, there is a difference. And then there's all different other losses, right? For me, I've lost friends, I've lost family members, I've lost my son, I've lost animals, I've lost a job, I've lost. So we just add all that on top. But when we can learn how to regulate our emotions behind, and our feelings behind all of this, that's when we get to step up into our healed self, because we're not overwrought with all this emotion. It's imagine having all these buckets of emotions hanging over our neck that we've accumulated since we were before born, because some of it's passed on, like you were talking about earlier. And if we can empty those buckets out and find the root cause of where those emotions even started, even in deep grief, emptying those buckets out of lifetimes ago of emotions, we can then start feeling the more appropriate emotions for this new loss more not efficiently, but more appropriately, with far less overwhelm, because we don't have the previous 5 decades of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, hurt, loss overflowing already.
I want to ask you one more question. Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. I want to ask you one more question about if people have kids who are struggling right now. And I don't want to put you on the spot, and this isn't it's okay. You're the solution and all. But the reason why I bring this up is because I've had conversations with other parents and colleagues and friends, and sometimes they're struggling with their kids, and sometimes they're struggling with their kids' sobriety. So one of the things, let's do an intervention. All right, let's do an intervention. Sometimes it works. A lot of times it doesn't work. It backfires. There's anger and all. And I'm not saying that you have a solution for everything. I'm just curious if people are struggling with, first of all, substance abuse. Maybe you're out, as you were saying, it's maybe you have something else going on. So you choose, instead of, it's easier because we're creatures of comfort. It's easier for us than do the hard work. Maybe I'll take a pill. I want to lose weight. No, it's very difficult to go to the gym and get disciplined to eat right. There's pills for you, side effects. I'll worry about that later. But nowadays, because we have all these things where it's easy shortcuts to life. There is no easy shortcut to life. So when you have this, people turn to substances because they're dealing with something else. What advice would you give? And besides your professional advice and coming in and speaking with you that you can help them. What advice would you give to parents if they're having, can they see the symptoms that you obviously have seen and went through? What do they do? What action do they, besides asking questions, which you already said, but is there an action they can take? Should they see a therapist? Because if my parents would have said to me, we're going to take you to a therapist, I would have been like, yeah, fuck that therapist and fuck all y'all. I don't give a shit what you say. I would be rebellious, and you're just adding to that. Is there anything that people can do?
I think talk therapy has a place all day long. You've been, every single person under the sun I know has been. One of the things that I find with talk therapy, especially for young adults or even teenagers, is they don't trust those people a lot of time. They don't trust that therapist. They don't know what to say. They're intimidated. They're scared. They're afraid that if they open up and they say something, they might get in trouble or it's going to be reported back to their parents. But what I've learned, and I spent, this is going to sound like, but anyways, I spent years of my own life going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings because I was doing too much cocaine when I was 21 years old. So Cocaine Anonymous was really hip back then, so I went and I stayed. And then I was told, don't drink, don't use, no matter what. And if you do, you're going to die or go insane or go to jail. And I was like, okay, then I won't. But then I learned that, you know what? This doesn't really resonate with me. Like this, I have nothing against any of the 12-step programs. It gave me a great foundation for a really long time and really like a whole bunch of really awesome stuff. What I also know is that repeating the traumas in our life, the dramas in our life over and over and over again, it sets off our central nervous system to think that we are experiencing that right now over again. And so it floods our body with hormones, it floods our body with fear, it floods our body with this shit story. And so kids who are put into rehab and are told that they have to talk about all this stuff, they don't even know what they need to talk about. But something has happened. Something has happened in their life, whether it's perceived, whether it's real, whether it's intended or unintended, from their childhood, that is making them feel not loved, not enough, not worthy, not heard, not seen. And when you combine all that with our world today and social media and bullying and school and COVID and isolation and all of that, the inward withdrawal just continues to get worse. And then self-medication starts.
Makes sense.
So knowing that there's something going on with your teenager, with your young adult, whether you want to admit that or not, is, I think, every parent's denial.
Yeah.
And it was mine. I didn't think anything happened, but I come to find out something very much did happen. Something very much did happen when that 15-year-old happened. And I had no idea. And like I said, if I knew then what I know today, like I wasn't educated as I'm educated right now when my son was 15. Do I have any regret in my life? If I could have one regret, that would be it. Like getting my education earlier, knowing that I needed to know that. But how would I know that? So I work really hard every day to not go to that guilt, to not go to that regret, to know that I'm here to help myself and I have a relationship with my son in the only way that I can today. And he is powerful in my life. He is the wings under which I fly.
Beautiful.
And I still have really shitty tear, snot, ball in a ball on the floor days.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know people that went through loss similar to yours that have never addressed it, and they don't talk about it. It's all the way down, but it shifted their personality, and it made them angry and bitter And regardless of how they show up in life, financially or whatever, it could be successful, but there's still a personality shift. And I really believe what you said about talk therapy. It is so, so important to be able to address void, loss, like you said, but get to the core of it. As painful as it is, go to the
That's
most
the void.
painful. Yep.
That's where the void is. It's getting to the core of that. It's admitting, it's knowing in the deepest part of who you are. Because we are not, we're so superficial. So many people are so superficial. But the bigger part of it, Len, too, is getting through all that void stuff, getting through all of that muck and clearing out our past. Because we all have our past. And when we're focused on everything that's going on back there, we're not focusing on what we want. We're focusing on that. And so we're taking every single step that we do today by our behavior and our belief system from back there, when that no longer fits. And that holds true from whether we lose somebody or not. We have to focus on what we want. What do we want from our lives? Who do we want to be? I don't want to be that bitter, angry person.
Sense. All right. So let's shift focus a little bit on music related topics. So,
okay.
So I ask all my guests. So first, if you recall, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Can never forget that. So very first concert I ever went to, I was 13, and it was Elton John at the Forum.
I saw him at Dodger Stadium, 2 years ago now, I guess, or a year and a half. Yeah, amazing. What was the last concert you attended?
Well, let's see. The last concert I attended was Telluride Blues and Blues Festival. I think I saw J.J. Grey.
Very cool.
And I was supposed to go see him 2 Sundays ago, but I decided to have vertigo instead.
Oh, you just decided it. You said,
yeah.
It's vertigo.
My body just decided, yeah, you're going to sit your ass on the couch.
All right. Another music related question. For the next year, you could only listen to 5 albums. Now, you don't have to remember the name of the album. It could be Elton John, it could be the artist, whatever. But what will be those 5 albums?
Led Zeppelin. Any Led Zeppelin album. Toys in the Attic. Goodbye. Yep. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. A Bee Gees hit song, and Chris Stapleton.
Nice. All right. So final question for you. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Kind of like yours behind you. So do you remember Paper Moon cards? The Paper Moon greeting cards?
Oh, yeah.
So they had all different genres and stuff. So I had a whole section of lips cards, a whole section of rainbow cards, a whole section of half-dressed men cards. The whole room was covered with rock posters and Peter Frampton and Aerosmith and satin lips with joints hanging out of them. That palm trees hanging from the ceiling from oh my God, what was the name of that store? I forgot. I guess an Oz type store.
Yeah,
remember that store? Oz?
Like Spencer Gifts or one of those.
Yes, like Spencer, kind of like that. Yeah.
No lava lamp.
Hippie room.
Lava lamp.
My son had a lava lamp. He loved his lava lamp. Yeah. No black light posters.
Yeah.
But definitely posters and decorated. And then of course my toe shoes hanging off of a ballet poster. It was like an eclectic array of everything.
Karin, where can people engage with you? Where can they get more of your content? Anything else you want to share?
Sure. So I'm at KarinClarke.com, and it's Karin, KarinClarke. Just KarinClarke.com. I've got some free resources on there. You can schedule a free call with me through there as well. And the work that I do my RVE process, the Rupture, Void, Expand, which is a little bit longer. It's like 6 to 8 weeks, depending upon what's going on. And then I also just do individual grief education and grief coaching. And I also do just other off sessions of releasing trapped emotions and imbalances within the body through working with the unconscious mind. Because our unconscious mind knows exactly what's wrong and tells us exactly what needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And for my audience, thank you so much for listening. Thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Thank you for the wonderful reviews. Love the 5 stars. Love the 4 stars. Comment. Well, I'm always looking to get better. So thank you. Thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, on Amazon. New one's coming out really soon, so look out for that. Just want to say, Karin, it's a delight. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being open about your life's journey. And it's so amazing to see people that have gone through hardship in their life, whatever they may be. They're able to utilize those lessons and be able to give to other people. So it's sort of like leaving that breadcrumb trail for others to follow. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on, Len. It's been my pleasure. And if I could just say one thing, never stop talking about your loved ones.
Yeah, sure. Thank
Alive
you.
or dead.
Thank you.
They matter. Yeah, thanks.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.